I feel really lucky to be doing a podcast with you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Because, no, I'm just kidding. It's all positive stuff. Because when something in sports breaks that has to do with the law, that has to do with suits or has to do with contracts or something like that, we're really lucky on Subjectively Correct Sports to have someone who studies this stuff for his job.
Well, yeah.
And went to Stanford Law School to be an expert on these kinds of things. So while you don't feel like you're an expert on this stuff because...
I'm not an expert on like labor disputes, like that's a whole different area of law. But
right, but
contracts
compared to Colin Cowherd, Rich Eisen, Dan Patrick, you are definitely an expert when it comes to this stuff. So your coverage of sports that we do here on the show, married to your law degree and your knowledge of that information, is going to make your analysis of the Colin Kaepernick settlement situation so much better and more detailed. And I'm setting you up for failure here, but that's okay because I'm putting you up up here. And even if you deliver here, like that. Anyway,
if the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
See, if he knows that, he's gonna nail this stuff. But I actually, all joking aside, we talked a little bit about this when it broke, when the story of the settlement broke, and I felt like, man, he's going to break it down in a way that no other sports show is going to be able to break down this Kaepernick stuff. So he settled with NFL over his collusion case.
Yeah.
And what information do you have on that?
Well, okay, so the case was essentially that the NFL or several owners in the NFL colluded, which means they conspired, they talked about, right, together to say, we're not going to give Colin Kaepernick a job. Right, we're not going to make him an offer to play for our team. And all you need to prove collusion is just that there was agreement among two or more of the owners. Okay,
so that at least two owners got together and said, "Don't hire Kaepernick."
That's right.
It's almost like antitrust or like anti-monopoly.
That's exactly. Right? Yeah. That's the basic principle.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the first question I think you asked me over text when this broke was, so this proves that there was like some level of collusion, right? And my response was maybe, because that's a good attorney's response in every situation.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
And the reason it's maybe and not yes or not no is because we don't know all the facts. We don't know what Kaepernick's camp knew. We don't know what the NFL and the various owners know. Okay? And so why would you settle, if you're the NFL, and you don't settle a lot of cases. You hardly settle ever. Why would you settle for a reported $60 million, a case that you think you might win? Right?
$60 million seems like a lot, but it's a drop in the bucket of the NFL's annual revenue.
Yeah, and not only that, it's you divide that up among, 32 NFL owners. That's a little under $2 million an owner. If you could pay $1.8 million to make this go away, you probably do, right? Okay, but let's talk about the motivation behind settling. Why would a company or the NFL choose to settle if they feel like they didn't do anything wrong? Okay.
So you're saying that the NFL, in their heart of hearts, really believes there was no collusion.
Yeah.
Why would they go through this process of settling and making it look like, to a layman like myself, make it look like there's some level of guilt?
Yeah, so scenario one, NFL feels like they're innocent, right? There was no collusion, right? There's circumstantial evidence, which means there's not like an email or a letter or a recording that proves that two owners actually colluded. But circumstantial evidence in this case is the fact that he's not on an NFL roster.
And so many bad quarterbacks are.
Right? Yeah, however many quarterback signings there have been since he's been out of the league. You look at that, you look at his performance while he was in the league.
And say what you want to say. You can't tell me that these backup quarterbacks in the league are not better than you can't tell me those guys are better than Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, and there are legitimate other reasons why you wouldn't necessarily give him a contract if you thought it would be a distraction for the team, and you thought, we have a decent backup, like the chances that our starter gets injured are minimal. Like let's not make this team about Kaepernick, right? Potential scenario there. Okay, but our first scenario is NFL and its owners say, no, we didn't collude. Why do we settle? Well, in any trial, there's a period called discovery. Okay, and discovery is when documents are handed over from one side to the other. Okay, in this case, Kaepernick and his team are going. They would request emails, letters, any kind of evidence, documentation relating, and sometimes not exactly relating, to Kaepernick and to anything they can tie to collusion. Okay,
and they have the right to request anything that they want, and the NFL is then obligated, because of the court system and the way it's set up, to provide that information to Colin's team.
Yeah, and I'm not a litigator, and so there may be some nuance to this that I don't, really appreciate, and so there may be certain limitations on to the extent you can, does an owner have to give over his cell phone and his records? I don't know exactly.
It's like any personal effects, maybe they keep personal and business stuff is separate, kind of a thing.
It's possible, but I'm not saying that that's how it is, but that's possible, right?
Good hedging.
Yeah.
So basically, you told me maybe.
Yeah.
You're a good lawyer.
But if you're an NFL owner, all right, and let's just say at a minimum, your official, your GMs and your laptop are going to be turned over, right? And all your email account's going to be scrubbed, right? And they're going to go through and they're going to search Kaepernick, right? They're going to search Colin. They're going to search Cap. They're going to put a bunch of search terms in for anything that might trigger this, right? That might pull up anything about Colin Kaepernick. Say you didn't collude, but you wrote an email. Wow, really hate this Kaepernick. Don't like his stance. Why don't these guys just shut up and play? Like, imagine you had that on your laptop. That's going to come up, right? And once it does, if Kaepernick's team decides to make it public, either through some kind of leak or they bring it up in trial, that's going to make you look really bad, right? And so if I'm an owner and I know I didn't collude, and I'm confident the 31 other owners didn't collude, but I know that some pretty nasty stuff is going to come out about me or some of my partners, some of the other owners, I may just make the calculation, it's worth it to me to pay $2 million for none of that to ever come out.
Almost like hush money.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's scenario one, okay? Scenario two, they knew there was collusion, okay? Two owners, they go to Roger Goodell and they say, you know what? We've been texting each other for the past 2 years saying, I'm never going to sign this guy if you don't sign him, right? And we sent texts to these 8 other owners, all in our division. No one wants him because we know he would be better than any backup in the division. But,
and some starters.
And maybe some starters, but, we think he's bad for the league financially, and so we don't want him in the league. And so if you don't make an offer, I won't make him an offer, right? Okay, and that's what you call the smoking gun, right? A piece of evidence that clearly proves you did what you're accused of doing. And if that scenario actually occurred, and really whether or not Kaepernick's camp knew about it, but the NFL knew, they know that would come out in discovery, right? At some point, that text is going to come up. And so let's just settle, right? I don't know what, there's a whole trial that goes around setting the valuation of the damages that Kaepernick and Reed would have sustained. And so maybe they determined that it was $100 million, right? And so if we can settle for $60 million, let's do that now and minimize our losses. So that's a plausible scenario.
But in that scenario, if the Kaepernick team does know that something's going on, and they're confident, settling makes it seem like they're kind of giving up a little bit just for the money. It makes it seem like it was a money grab and it wasn't about exposing wrongdoing from the owners.
That's right. And everything from what Kaepernick's camp has been saying is that they're willing to see this through trial. And so I am a little confused as to why you would take the settlement. If you're confident you have evidence that would lead to a verdict in your favor, and you're confident that the damages would be significant enough to compensate you for being out of the league, why wouldn't you see this through trial, right? And so the only thing I can think of is that they were pretty sure there was evidence.
The Kaepernick team was
The Kaepernick team was pretty sure there was some evidence. They needed to get to discovery to prove it, but they weren't 100% sure. And the damage to Kaepernick's cause, if in the event of a that the NFL was found to not have colluded was greater than the upside of proving that the NFL colluded, right? And so they made, in my opinion, they may have made a calculated decision that we could see this through a trial. We think there's a chance that there was collusion. We think we can get a lot of money. But if there wasn't collusion, and we don't have the smoking gun at this point, we're gonna look really bad. Kaepernick personally will look bad for pursuing this,
and he would take the brunt of that.
He would take the brunt of that.
Nike would also take the brunt of that.
And the discussion, the movement, whatever you want to call it, that he started, may be impaired because of it. Okay, and so you weigh all of those things, and so if you're not 100% confident in your case, and a settlement comes along, more likely than not, you're going to take it, right? Also, these things can drag on for years.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that's a consideration both the NFL and Kaepernick's camp would consider.
I mean, especially if Kaepernick wants to get back in and play, would the NFL be allowed to hire him? Would any owner be allowed to hire him if he had an active case against the NFL? Like, would that be tampering in the case in some way?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Right? But I mean...
I would think if someone was suing me or the organization I'm part of, that I would not want to give that person a job.
Makes sense, right?
Right.
But so there are a lot of nuances and a lot of complex things going on here, and I'm glad that you broke it down the way that you did, because it's a lot messier and a lot more complicated than it seems. A lot of people are just wanting to jump to the conclusion that the NFL settled, therefore Colin Kaepernick was right, and that shows some sort of guilt for the NFL. But you're saying maybe, but that might not be the case. This might be a calculated decision by both parties to say, you know what, in the NFL's case, maybe there is something hidden that we don't know about, and also maybe we just want this to go away now, because the damage it would do over a 2 or 3 year process where this is in the news for 2 or 3, 5, whatever years is worth $60 million to us or more. Get rid of that, make it go away. And Kaepernick's thinking, what if we go through this entire process? I can't play in the league for these 4 or 5 years or whatever, or no one will hire me while this is going on because he wants to play in the NFL. But if I can just take this money now, I get my money, and then maybe I can get back into football, and it's just settled and it's done. So it's a lot more complicated and a lot more messy. It's a lot less black and white than people originally think it is. And I'm glad you were able to break that down for us, because it is messy and complicated.
Yeah, and this notion that if a company settles, they're guilty, right? I think it's too easy to jump to that. And you see companies do this a lot, like even when they're 100% sure they didn't do what they're accused of, right? Like, if you're a huge multi-billion-dollar company and there's a $100,000 lawsuit that you just don't want, there's potentially like bad PR that could come from it, even though you know you're in the right, just by it being in the news, it's going to have some bad PR. And, you could go on for years. Like, let's just pay him the $100,000 and be done with it. I'm not saying that that's a good business practice, because that could invite future lawsuits from people who hope to do the same. You see that with so-called patent trolls who they buy a bunch of patents and then they sue anyone that may be infringing on those patents, right? Anyone that can... The most tenuous claim that they can make, they'll make it and hope that these companies just pay them off, right? To get rid of the headache, right?
Right.
And so, I wouldn't put a percentage on it or anything, but when I hear settlement, my first thought, just having seen this so many times, is not, oh, they're guilty. It's, oh, they just wanted to be done with this.
Yeah.
But I guess good for Kaepernick. I don't know. It's kind of... It's a little, for me, I kind of wanted to see this play out because I wanted to know if the NFL was colluding, right?
So I think we as fans and people that follow sports were robbed of any resolution on this, because we're not left with a definitive, yes, Kaepernick was right. They were keeping him out of the league on purpose. And the NFL, we don't know if there was no evidence of collusion. We don't know. And so it keeps us in the dark. And this might be a mystery that comes out years and years later in some 30 for 30 or whatever they're doing on ESPN 4.
Yeah, and both the NFL and Kaepernick's team issued very similar statements, essentially that the the terms of the settlement agreement are confidential, subject to a confidentiality agreement, so we have no further statement, right?
And when you say confidentiality agreement, that can also apply to whatever was found in discovery, if there was discovery.
Sure.
And it could also go into, we're not going to talk about anything we talked about here in our settlement. It's just private 100%. And there's penalties if you break that non-disclosure agreement, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the actual terms of confidentiality will be in that settlement agreement.
Which is confidential.
Which is confidential, right? And so it could be that, Kaepernick and his team are barred from speaking negatively about the NFL for a certain period of time. It could be limited to just speaking about this dispute. It could be broader than that. It could be a short amount of time. It could be the rest of his life. I don't know if that's actually legal to have a confidentiality agreement
until you die.
But something for me to look at. But also, because it's confidential, right? You would think no details would come out, right?
But then how can we know it's like $60 million and stuff? Right?
And I wanted to get to that. We don't know. There was a leak, right? But there are we may never know the actual amount, right? And there are various motivations for each camp to leak a figure that may be incorrect.
So the NFL could be like, oh yeah, we gave him $60 million, when in reality they paid him $250 million because there was actual evidence and the Kaepernick team knew it.
Or the Kaepernick's team could have leaked $60 million and they actually got $2 million.
To make it seem like they were right.
Yep. And neither the NFL nor Kaepernick's camp can confirm or deny that number because that would be in breach of the confidentiality agreement. You can't comment on the terms. Right? And so just because it's reported that it's $60 million doesn't mean it's $60 million. It could just be for appearance sake.
Bum bum.